Mission Impossible is something of an anomaly as a film franchise. It's very rare that any series of movies can consistently get better with each installment over time. But with the exception of Mission Impossible 2, that's exactly what this franchise has done. 3 was a huge revitalization to the franchise, and it's probably the best movie J.J. Abrams has ever worked on. And then Ghost Protocol was even better. And then here comes Christopher McQuarrie to do Rogue Nation, and it gets even better. And then he makes history by being the first ever director to do two Mission Impossible films, and he does Fallout, which is even better. And to this point, in my mind, has still served as the best one in the franchise. Now, the thing with Dead Reckoning is it probably had the worst villain in recent memory when it comes to Mission Impossible. Considering that this movie, Final Reckoning, was originally devised as Dead Reckoning Part 2, because I remember when it was called Part 1 and then they changed it, that doesn't change my memories. Like, anytime a movie is called Part 1 and then gets retitled, I know that the next movie is still Part 2. I don't care if it's called Across the Spider-Verse, it's still Beyond Part 2. I don't care if you called it Endgame, it's still Infinity War Part 2. Final Reckoning is still Dead Reckoning Part 2. So this movie directly deals with the events of the last movie and the fallout from that one, no pun intended. And so the villain, Gabriel from Dead Reckoning, is still present here. I'll go ahead and say right off the bat, he's better, because I actually had completely forgotten his name after Dead Reckoning, but I think I'll probably remember him a little bit better now that we have this kind of newer, revised version of him for Final Reckoning. The thing with Mission Impossible is they keep finding ways to one-up themselves, not just in like the scope of the stunts that are being done or the intensity of the moments, but just sheer magnitude of the story and the plot. And even though the stunts can get really over the top and start to seem really ridiculous, they always serve the story. It never feels contrived. It's like an Uncharted 2 versus Uncharted 3 thing, where it's like the story of Uncharted 2 gets you to these organic, well set up and well established moments, like the train, whereas Uncharted 3 was like, well, what if Nathan fell out of a plane? And so they build the story around these big set pieces. It doesn't feel like that's how they operate with Mission Impossible, and even if it is, they do a much better job at stringing them together. There's a few huge sequences in this movie that are all like, they leave you on the edge of your seat, you're white knuckling, you know that the stunts are going to take you to like the very last second and push a little bit past that, make you really feel that tension, make you feel like it's really like it's now or never, and hold on just a little bit longer, and then it'll be resolved. That's always satisfying, even if I know it's going to happen every single time. And I'm becoming addicted to it. I can't get enough. It's really unfortunate then that this is, as far as we can tell, the final Mission Impossible movie. With that in mind, how does this movie do when it comes to wrapping up everything that we've been through for the last 29 years? I will say that with the exception of Mission Impossible 2, 4, and 5, just about everything in this movie is the direct result of something from a previous film, and that's really satisfying. It's really interesting as well, because it never feels like cheap member-berry stuff or like just a way to cash in on nostalgia. It really does feel like a reward for just remembering even the most mundane details of previous films. Everything is so relevant within itself, and they do a very good job of making it feel like, even though you know it wasn't, that this was the plan and the intention and the design all along. But I mean, this is Mission Impossible, right? Like, you know what you're in for. Simon Pegg is incredible. Ving Rhames is awesome. Unfortunately, Rebecca Ferguson is not in this one, but we do have Haley Atwell, who's even better here than she was last time. I don't know how they keep getting all these gorgeous women in these movies, because Pom Klementieff is back as well as Paris. She does great, and obviously Tom Cruise continues to deliver. Something that's really fascinating about this movie and Top Gun Maverick is there's a rumor going around Hollywood that like Tom Cruise has something in his contract that prevents the possibility of his character ever dying on screen. So when you're watching these movies, you know rationally he's gonna make it. But it's still so tense and so stressful and so expertly crafted that you really do trick yourself into believing that this is it. I walked into this movie being pretty sure that Ethan Hunt would have some sort of death, but not like a definitive one. And I think me tricking myself into thinking that and having that preconceived notion before I went into the movie influenced the way that I perceived a lot of the things that go down. But either way, I was hooked, I was immersed the entire time. I have heard a lot of people say that as a finale, you know, as the culmination of all of these events, it's a bit of a letdown, or it's like mid-tier in the scope of the franchise. That I completely disagree with. I think it's the second best movie behind Fallout. So, if you wanted to know, in a sentence, what do I think of this movie? It's right in between Fallout and Ghost Protocol. One thing that I am curious about, though, it's reported that this movie has had a $400 million budget. If that's true, then, you know, we have to pretty much double that for marketing. This movie cost $800 million to make and put out. If that's the case, it would need to make $1.2 billion to be considered a success. Mission Impossible has never done that. Top Gun did that, but Mission Impossible, no. Not quite. And I don't think it's possible. And I'm just wondering where that even comes from, because yes, this movie is grand in scope and in scale, just like you want it to be for the finale. But it does not scream at any point while you're watching the movie, this is the most expensive film production of all time. But apparently, apparently that's what we're looking at. I'm kind of blown away by that. But maybe it's just kind of like a, you know what, it's the last one that we're going to do. We're not too worried about profit margin because now that we're going to come back and do another one of these, so let's just go all out, do everything the McQuarrie and crews have wanted to do. And to that end, it's fantastic. I will say though, if you watched Dead Reckoning, then you know that the main villain of this movie is an AI called the Entity. How prescient. You know, like, it is very ironic that a movie would come out around now where you're taking down a rogue AI. Not that that's a brand new idea. I mean, you've read I Have No Mouth and I Must Scream, you've seen The Matrix, you've seen The Terminator, you've seen Avengers Age of Ultron. Rogue AI is nothing new. But I do think it's interesting that Tom Cruise is taking a shot at it right now. You know, like the last action hero in real life taking on AI in an era where so many people think that AI is going to bring about the end of Hollywood. That's a fascinating concept to me, even though that doesn't really have anything to do with the movie itself. However, in the movie, the context that they present the AI to you in is kind of like, I don't know, it feels kind of like, I don't know, I don't want to say it feels like, you know, just script magic, like it just does whatever the script needs it to, but it does feel like it goes somewhere beyond, you know, rogue computer virus and can almost just be this omnipresent force that seems to control everything, which is what I guess, that's what AM is, that's what Skynet is. So I guess it's in line. It just feels, I don't want to say that, like, Mission Impossible jumps the shark with this movie, because that's not the case. It just feels like that's a little bit insane for Mission Impossible, especially because there's a really big retcon in regards to the third movie, that you're just like, okay, that's, sure. Like, even the sentence that they say to contextualize it, you're just like, I guess so. But I mean, that's like literally like my only complaint with the movie. Apart from that, I thought it was intense, it was exciting, the action was amazing. It's always amazing in these movies. The story was super good, the performances are always solid all around the cast. And if this is really it for Mission Impossible, this is the last one they're ever gonna get, I don't think that they could have done any better. I would give this movie a 9 out of 10. 9, yeah. Yeah, 9 out of 10 sounds good. If you've seen Mission Impossible: The Final Reckoning, tell me what you thought of it. In the comments below, we can talk about it, and I'll see you guys later, I suppose. Also, you know what, tell me what your favorite Mission Impossible movie is while you're down there. If it's Fallout, I think we're going to be pretty good friends. Anyway, see you later.